Welcome to CMOs Off Script, where the conversations are as bold as our coffee and the insights as sharp as our wit. We're your hosts, Amanda, Bethany, Julia, Laura, and Nisha, 5 women with diverse perspectives on navigating the intricate world of healthcare marketing. Had enough of the same old marketing babble? Us too. We'll dive into one topic each week and serve up our unfiltered advice. Get ready for a fresh take on marketing. Welcome to CMOs Off Script. Hi, everybody. Welcome to CMOs Off Script, where the marketing talk is hot, but the coffee is probably pretty tepid because we have so many things that we're doing right now. I'm going to kick us off. I'm Bethany. Hi, everyone. I'm going to kick us off by asking everyone to go around our virtual room and talk about all the things you're juggling right now. You get 30 seconds each, so we got to go quick. But I'm going to kick it to Amanda. What are you juggling this week?
Oh my God. Well, I've been out of the office for 3 days. So I'm literally just getting back in this morning, trying to catch up on emails, trying to manage my daughter's, trying to not stage manage my daughter's production for her talent show and help an organization think through their messaging and value prop. So
okay.
That's my current hot topics.
It's a light week for you, I see. It's a light week. Nisha, what do you have going on?
30 seconds. So it's event season. We've got a couple of events going on. We have a pretty big showcase at South by Southwest. And so I'm Austin based. And so that's been the hot priority. And then we just went through a reorg. And I want everybody to just take a deep breath and join collectively with me in how stressful that can be. Yeah. So going through the motions of that.
That is rough. We're glad you're here with us. Julia.
Yeah. Well, so I'll check on the things you're both facing. I feel a lot of empathy. We are in event season, and it is hot and heavy. We're also, I'm also thinking about the amount of change I can introduce to my organization at any one time. We're always optimizing, and yet there's some things that need more than an optimization. And so I'm thinking through that and just what's the right level of change to introduce. And on the home front, we've got some visitors staying for the weekend. So I'm thinking about, like, when am I going to change those sheets? Maybe.
You can do it now. Go ahead. Just go.
Yeah, just sit it on the bed and offer it up for your guys.
Yeah, they're nicely folded along with your towels right there.
Yeah. Laura, how are you doing?
I'm great. I am 1 foot out the door on vacation. So I'm literally wrapping up this call and closing my suitcase, and we are leaving. So, it's been a busy morning with a bunch of different calls to wrap up work week so I can get out the door. So I'm great. So.
I love it. We're between you and vacation.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
And I'm just mentally trying to get back in the game. So,
there you go.
We're both ships. Like, yeah.
Exactly.
Love all of this. I got a little afraid of my child today. Has that ever happened? Like, sometimes I get scared of my kid.
All the time.
Today it was because it's Spirit Week at school and they have to dress as their favorite color. Mm-hmm. And I always get nervous when Spirit Week comes. Yeah, I always get nervous.
That hate parents. Yeah.
Spirit Week comes up and my kid hates me because I don't have an all pink wardrobe for her to wear today. And it was so bad that she left for the bus, did not look back, did not hug me, did not say I love you. It was like a rough morning. And so that's on my mind, but we got work to do. We have things to do. We have clients, we have colleagues, we have some of us have vacations. I don't know who that is, but
you won't remember when she sees you off the bus.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see.
I think
so true.
But you will. So you have to work on not remembering.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I might be mad by then. I don't know. So here we go. Okay. The topic today. We are going to talk about early stage companies who are all trying to figure out when and where to invest in marketing. We hear this all the time. All of us have a ton of experience helping CEOs and leadership teams start to think through this process of investment, of like how they're going to think about marketing, how they're going to invest, where to invest. We've probably all seen some really good decisions early on in this process with organizations, and also some bad ideas play out. Bad ideas are really common. So we'll talk about that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then we're also going to talk about our recommendations from the lessons that we've learned and that we've seen other companies learn over the past, decades that we've been doing this. So I think it's going to be fun. Are you guys ready?
Totally.
Let's do it.
I'm ready.
Let's do this. Okay, first question for the group, because I am dying to know this. We see it all the time. Early stage companies are dealing with a lot. We know this. And one of the big questions we hear is, when do we invest in marketing and where do we start? Many CEOs are kind of shooting from the hip in the early days. And so I'm going to ask this question to the group. What are some of the first critical marketing investments that you would recommend to a company if they're just getting off the ground? And then we'll talk about where it goes from there. So anybody have an early thought on this one?
Well, I'll jump in. Every company that we work with, when we talk about starting an inbound program or an ABM program, the first place we start is looking at their website. And if their website isn't, not just that they have a website, but that the website is, works appropriately, has good messaging, has forms, has all the things working on it, a really functioning website. So I think, early stage, out of the gate, you don't just need a website, you need a really functioning website before you can do really anything else. Like it's the old fashioned get in the Bell phone book, you gotta have a place online, and you've got to be communicating. That's my take.
Yeah, I think that's right. I love the way you posed the question too, Bethany, because really once you have a business idea and you're building your product, and then you want people to know, you typically build a site, and this site is an opportunity for people to find you and engage with you. And it might be that your form isn't a form, it's a click to sales at companyname.com, and it's an email inbound. But man, I think there's a place soon after that website, splash site, to becoming a full site, to becoming a site where you gather inbound, where you're going to need a marketer at some level, probably junior, but someone who can execute and get going.
That's fair. And we will get to who to hire when in just a minute. So we'll go there. Any dissent here? Do we think there's anything else besides a website that companies need to think about?
Yeah, so I'm going to start way before that, because if we're talking about early stage companies, we got to know what we're putting on the website, essentially.
Yes, that was going to be what I was going to say. What are you actually saying there? Because that makes all the difference.
And I think oftentimes, and how many times have any of us started in an organization, and the first thing we hear is, we need a new website, or our website is terrible, right? And it's always that grass is on the greener other side scenario. And this might just be the pragmatic side of me, but I always feel like we jumped several steps in the beginning of just the foundational elements of like product market fit. Who are we talking to? What do they care about? And a lot of that stuff takes investment, because it's time that you're spending. I think it's so worth it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. You're 100% right.
Well, even to your point, you're writing a business plan as someone who is starting a company, maybe gathering funding, accepting loans. What's in your business plan? Market strategy, probably.
Should be.
That's where you need a marketer.
Yeah. Well, and you've got to be really clear on what is your value proposition, right? Like, I was talking with a company in the last few months, and they were like, tell me about a company's value. That was one of the first conversations. Tell me about a company's value proposition that you really can get behind. And I just thought, like, it was a thoughtful question to be asking of a marketing leader, because they clearly know they're having to pivot who their audience is, who they're selling into. They're going from direct to consumer to B2B. I'm like, this is great. You've got to be really clear on what your key messages are and what your value proposition is. And I think so many companies like jump the shark and are like, all right, we're just going to have a website. We can say whatever we want. And I think that getting people in line around what are your key messages and making sure that everybody can sing from the same songbook matters a lot. And I think a lot of companies wait way too, I mean, it may not be the first thing you do, but it should not be way far down the line. And I think that it often is way far down the line.
I like that interviewing question. I actually like it when the marketer asks the company, what's your value prop? And maybe you'll learn based on how they articulate it, where they are.
Totally.
Yeah, how they answer that question and if they can even answer
Very
it
telling.
succinctly is pretty telling of their stage and how far they've gotten down that thought process. I want to push back even further than website and the content on the website, mostly because I've just recently been working on a naming exercise for a company, and even names are really tough these days. Like, try to find
So hard.
either a domain that hasn't been purchased already, or just literally a name, any word that we've ever heard of. They've all been trademarked. Like, they've all been taken. You think you're creative. This part's so tough when you're an excited entrepreneur and you're like, I got it. I got the name. It's so perfect. It's so pithy. It's so like, they're all taken. I'm sorry. There's just like, it's such a nightmare to pick a name for a company these days. And there's a ton of great firms out there to help, people through this. But a lot of times you've picked your name, you can get a certain way, a certain distance with that name, but then you got to pick the real name. And a lot of times I get called with those kind of requests. Naming is tough because no one's ever happy with the name. And you really have a lot of creative work to do to get something that is available and domain names. But I digress. That's just a tough spot. But a lot of times I'll talk to organizations that are 2, 3, 4 years into the process, and they're having to either do a rename or, they're growing out of the name that they picked originally, and, or they pivoted and the name doesn't make sense anymore, those kinds of things. So even naming.
Yeah, we're working with a client right now who's doing that, who's having to pivot on their name.
I think that is such an interesting issue, though, of like, how do you leave yourself? I mean, and we could go, that's a whole different rabbit hole, but how do you leave yourself, like, provide enough clarity about your business, but also leave yourself open enough that you're not completely going off the rails and having to do a rename in, 3 to 5 years when the business pivots enough that it's no longer relevant. So
worth thinking about for sure. Episode 17 for CMOs Off Script.
File that one.
File away. Okay, I love this line of thinking. I'm going to keep pushing us. So after early investments, we know it's the early value prop content that is going to go on the website, stuff like that, picking the name, all those things. You may or may not have brought in a marketer yet. A lot of organizations are doing this themselves. When companies are thinking about their investments, are you seeing, when in the businesses you work with or organizations that you've been part of, you're seeing investments change over time, right? Like, as an organization matures, they're probably investing in different things. How do you guys think about that? Like, what have you seen? So after website, what comes next? And how do you start to make those decisions as a CEO or as a leadership team? And Julie, I think you mentioned, like, at some point, you're probably going to want to make your first marketing hire. How do you guys think about that stuff?
Gosh, it's such a good question. And, for early, right? You're an entrepreneur, you have an idea. Every single city, typically of size, has an incubator. Go to their events, participate, learn, listen. Not in a city, no problem. They do these remotely. They're virtual gatherings. You can get lots of inputs and insights. And you have to form an opinion, I believe, as a business owner, as a business leader, so that you can know which advice to take or not. And unless you have a point of view or a feeling, you might spend money on things that aren't valuable or consultants that aren't steering you. So to try to be informed and then arrive at a decision. I love incubators, and I think they've just exploded in this last decade to help for that very reason. I think the second piece I would note is there's such an incredible amount of talent available for fractional marketers, fractional marketing leaders who can give you 10 hours a week at an affordable cost and really counsel you. It's a worthy investment. There are fractional leaders for lots of things. There's fractional CFOs, right? But getting quality and seasoned advice from seasoned pros, frankly, is important as you're maturing.
I think a lot of times you're likely to hire someone that's probably, maybe a bit more junior, but high potential, and frankly, a Swiss Army knife. Like a lot of times you really benefit from, I still love to hire a Swiss Army knife. Like I am a big fan of hiring somebody who can do a lot of different things, particularly in earlier organizations, right? Like, yes, like you can do this, you can do this. Like you may not be like the most amazing person to do, like go deep on email marketing, but like, you can help me think about like how we put together a slick. You can help me think about what we need to do when it comes to events. You can help me think, right? Like I can point you in many different directions. And so I think that can be incredibly helpful. But I do think this idea of finding an agency that you can partner with that will help you is critical. And particularly, I think from a strategic perspective, if you can find good counsel, that really matters. And particularly if you're not ready to hire somebody who is pretty senior, but you want somebody who's got that visibility of having looked at multiple businesses, can think strategically. I remember when I came into, I was the second marketing hire in this organization. And I was like, thank God they've at least been working with a strategic marketing agency that actually could provide them with some counsel. I came in and it started to change the dynamic. But even in that organization, I came in as marketing hire number 2, was an individual contributor. And then it was like, all right, let me start figuring out what we need to do and helping the CEO and tell this story. I think it depends though.
Yeah. And, what's interesting about the Swiss Army knife is that it's great when you start out, but what happens as the company matures and scales, right? And you need some specialists.
Oh yeah.
And when you hit that point where you realize you need an SEO expert or you need an actual ops person who is HubSpot certified, who can pull reporting. And that's where I feel like as marketing leaders, we have to make really tough calls, because oftentimes it's that the Swiss Army knife was incredibly helpful for a couple of years, but then maybe not a good fit anymore as the organization matured. And it's a hard decision for us to make, honestly. And I've come about it multiple times in multiple different scenarios. And I struggle with it because oftentimes I think to myself, like, maybe this is a coaching opportunity where we could really get these folks like in a certain area. Right. But it really depends. And I think that, and honestly, like, I don't know if there is a science to when you get to that point. And Bethany, I'd love to hear your take on like when you typically see that switch of us, marketing leaders hiring generalists as opposed to specialized roles. I feel like a few of us, Julia especially, I feel like you're in that position right now too, of trying to find a few folks. So it's an interesting challenge, I think, as an organization grows and as the marketing team grows.
You're highlighting a little bit of that idea too, that the person who thrives at a startup isn't necessarily the person that thrives at the next stage. Like they're different kinds of companies as companies grow.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think this topic, or what I'm starting to hear from your responses, and I agree with, frankly, is that, as the company moves from maybe like seed funding to Series A to Series B and like grows as an organization, there's probably a bit higher number of employees. the level of investment is changing over time in the marketing space as well. And so you're making decisions about when to bring in early, sort of leadership level support, when to bring in those Swiss Army knife, we can do everything, Jacks and Janes of all the skills. And I do think it does change over time. I've seen and had to bring in the sort of junior high potential folks who can do a lot of things. And I think about it like a major and a minor. Most people have a thing that they're really into and they're really great at, or they want to get really great at, and then a few other things that they can also do. But trying to get one person to do everything is usually a recipe for disaster, and nothing gets done very well. So if you can kind of major and minor with your team in the early days or years, and then I have actually had to layer my whole team in the past. And so I personally don't think it's a hard decision. I think it's typically something I can see miles away. And Nisha, to your point, I am trying to see like, where does everybody on the team really, do they want to lean into their majors and just go in that direction? Because I'm thinking about career pathing, or, are they right long-term for this organization? Because like also you're seeing people really thrive at certain times. And then maybe as the organization gets really big and the pressure gets, the pressures change and stuff like that, people don't thrive there anymore. Yeah. I've had tough conversations with people to say like, I'm going to bring in someone over you. And I've had the pushback, and I've had those conversations about, you can apply for this role if you want, or bring me the plan to if you want this role, I'll consider it. And I've had a couple of those conversations where then the individual came back and said, actually, I think you're right. And I've brought in that more senior person, and the two people, I'm thinking of one example where I brought in a very senior product marketer, like a VP of product marketing. And some of the more junior team members were so grateful. They learned so much from this individual, because it also gets to a point where me as their leader, like I can't teach them the stuff they need to know. I actually really need that functional expert to come in and like support the team so everybody can grow. Because I'm not deep in the technicalities of HubSpot and like putting that together, or I'm not deep in like all of the research that needs to be done from a product marketing perspective. So layering that team over time is, I think, really good for everybody, but it's a real tough conversation in the early days for that. Any other thoughts on team building?
Gosh, I'm nodding vigorously.
I know.
Yeah.
I think it's important. And I love that frank and kind conversation to say, I love that you are ready to rise. Here's what I observe. Here are some things I think that could help. And the adjacent part of that is what you just mentioned. Like, I can tell you that I know we need more resources so I can help you grow as a strategic blank. Could be marketing automation manager, could be product marketer, could be content strategist. As part of helping you grow, I'm bringing in more resources. And I want you to know I support your career growth here. Like it's a thoughtful way to say, I see you and I see your ambition and I want you to grow. And these are the ways I can help you. And part of it is by bringing in someone who's a pro at that. Because the five of us on this call, we are awesome generalists. And we have deep spikes. I read an article that said you actually need a pie-shaped marketer, like the pie symbol, where they have two deep spikes. So I'm thinking about that more. And
I love that. That's great.
You need to bring in a pro who complements you. And a great, like, part of being a good leader is you bring in people who are good and different at things, not all as you, and not someone that you won't feel a little threatened by. You need someone who's really good and strong and is going to challenge you as a leader too.
I'm going to echo that. I think, like, Bethany, just hearing you say it, and Julia saying it too, right? I think that is the mark of, just on that point, like that is the mark of a great leader, admitting that you're not vertically deep in a certain area and putting your ego aside and being able to say, I'm going to hire somebody that's really going to help the team. I mean, that in itself, there's so many CEOs and other leaders out there that can't seem to put their egos aside to be able to do that, to hire the right team member. And so I just want to make that point.
Mm-hmm. Best, we are not the smartest person in the room. And I would put that in any leadership room, whether it's your executive leadership team. You don't want to have one person who's the smartest in the room and always needs to be heard. Now, ultimately, the CEO, and especially if we're PE backed, the CEO has a stake, is possibly the chair of the board. Obviously has a different remit and will make the final call. But I love a CEO who listens, hears the perspectives of the variety of team members around the table, and says, okay, based on what I've heard, here's what we're going to do. So that idea of cultivating talent that's good and different than you as a leader is so important.
Well, I think
hire good people and get out of their way.
Yes.
Right? Like
that another way.
Smart
Oh my
people
God.
and let them do their thing.
Yeah.
Please.
This next section I think is going to be real good. I can't wait to hear your responses to this because we've all seen the investment train wreck, have we not? I'm so curious if you all have experiences where you either got into a company as a leader or you worked with a client where they really made some investment mistakes when it came to marketing. What did that look like? Where are you seeing either underinvestment or overinvestment? Where do you hate it when you get into a place and what you see the budget and you're like, oh my goodness, that is a bad idea. Talk to me about those experiences.
So good. I love a testing and learning environment, and in particular, like, you will make a mistake. Organizations, you will invest in something wrong. And you're going to learn quickly, and hopefully quickly and in a small way, right? You're not investing in a big way and losing in a big way. But so one, acknowledge there will be some mistakes along the way. The most important thing, I think, is to have that feedback-rich environment where you're getting either the data, the market feedback, the customer feedback to learn. We need to adjust. The making big bets can pay off, but gosh, it'd be sure nice to have a pilot as you go to make a small bet. Luckily, a lot in marketing is measurable, a whole lot. From the message you might test on your homepage or on a landing page. Web is a great way to test messaging. There's lots of ways to do that. You could also, invest in ways that you can measure next best strategy. There's so many ways you can measure what you do next, but know that there will be mistakes, and so make them small and quickly. Okay,
you totally just didn't give us an example though. Sorry.
Okay. We all have the graveyard of examples.
We're gonna come back to you. Who
Okay.
has something that you've seen where you were just like, oh no. Okay, Laura.
This isn't something I've seen. This is something I've done, like a mistake that I've made.
Oh, yeah.
Which is juicy. So I think in general, there was this first time that I came in, and I was replacing another marketing leader. This marketing leader was spending a lot of money on I think various terms as far as SEO, and spending a lot of money on digital marketing. Had an agency that they were working with, pouring a huge amount of their budget into ads, copy, all sorts of stuff. And when I came in, I think my gut was telling me that I needed to dig in there. And my gut was telling me that when it came to their overall strategy, the amount that it was like returning, like it just wasn't sitting right. There was no conversion that was happening. There was a lot of numbers and metrics. Like we were getting a lot of leads, but none of them were converting. And I think within my first 30 days, I just kind of sat on it. And I really wish that I would have dug in, because it turned out that, 90 days or 60 days later, I went back and I started to do some analysis over it. And yeah, none of those leads were they were all disqualified. They were not of quality. They were all really bad. We were paying a ridiculous amount of money to this agency to just month over month just continue on just based off of like the stuff that they were like the lights on activities that they were doing. And so it's one of those hard lessons that I learned around spending on digital when you don't necessarily have a strategy, and you just, working with an agency that specializes in it is great, but sometimes they don't understand the industry as well as you do. They don't understand the terms as well as you do, the competition as well as you do, and just letting sometimes that agency just do whatever they want is probably not the best bet. And
good story.
Good one.
Who else?
The story that's still sort of that I think is a recurring theme out there, but I worked with a company, and I started working with them after they had made their commitment to HIMSS, and they were spending, I think, about $500,000 on their HIMSS presence. There's just no way they were getting that kind of value out of it. And beyond that, there wasn't a cohesive approach from the sales team about how they engage at HIMSS. And so it was not just we made this massive financial commitment to participate in this event, but then on top of that, there's not this coordination with sales. There was no historical experience of working with sales to make HIMSS productive. And I'm a huge believer. I'm not opposed to conferences, but I'm really, really leery about the spend on conferences. And I'm really critical about what goes into it and how you do it. And if you're going to do it, then you have to do it right. Like if you're going to be there, then you have to be there. And then that's a coordinated effort between sales and marketing. So it's not just the commitment and the spend that worries me, but then when there's not this cohesive, here's your account list, here's how you're taking it down from a very tactical sales approach. It just becomes this massive expense with a very difficult ROI story to tell.
Oh my God, I want to laugh and cry at the same time. Like there are like so many feelings. Right?
I think we all have that reaction.
Yeah,
the cringe factor. Yes.
And
it was a rough one.
Of that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I just, again, I'm not opposed to conferences. Like, I think that especially in our very niche space, there's a huge value. But it's like how you do it and how it's taken down and what that looks like and how you make it productive.
What are your goals?
I think
right?
that. Yeah, you absolutely. What are your goals? What are you bringing to it? How are you differentiating? There's just so much to it. And I think it requires so much coordination, 6 months out. It's not something that you do lightly. So that's my biggest, and that's my biggest place where I felt like you were tipped over our skis, like we're absolutely spending our marketing budget in the wrong place. Like we needed to come back home for the next year. We absolutely reduced the budget. We completely changed the tactic, changed the approach. So I think that's when you see that kind of money going into it and you're like, but that could be used in a really different way or so yeah, that's my story. Yeah.
Keep going.
What a show. What a show we just completed. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. I'm so happy to have had this conversation, and I always learn a lot from you. So
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Yeah, bye, guys.
This podcast was made possible by Breezy Hill Marketing. Don't forget to explore the podcast notes or CMOSOffScript.com for additional insights and resources. Until next time, be bold and stay curious.